Hi, my name is Nyree. I've got two adopted sons and this channel is all about tips, advice, support, help. And it's for those of you who haven't adopted yet or who have adopted. And we've had our sons for around about 9 years now, and we had them as foster children and then we eventually adopted them about 3 years ago. So this video is going to describe to you what we've gone through as we've tried to seek out support, help and advice for our own sons, and particularly at the moment what we're doing for our older son, but I'll be able to make a video about what we're doing for our younger son because both now we are kind of pursuing help for them. So if you've looked at any of my videos on my channel, I'll put a link there about our adoption story because it will give you a bit of an idea about our sons' backgrounds, which I won't go into too much here, but suffice to say that they had been very neglected and abused, and there is a lot of history there which it would be easier if I shared with you because you'd understand the level to which they were exposed to, but it's not something that I really want to share too deeply on YouTube. So anyway, what we found was that over the years that we've had the boys, we've always been suggested that attachment is their main issue. And I do agree that attachment is one of their main issues. They do have a very avoidant style of attachment, and they have had assessments done on them as looked after children. Looked after children is what we call children in social care in the UK, if you're not from the UK and you're watching this. So as I say, the history is very difficult, and when they came to us, they had great attachment issues because they had learnt to survive in their home physically, mentally and in every way, and so they weren't going to trust us as foster carers. So over time, of course, we did build up that attachment with them, but then they went for an adoption which broke down within 3 months and came back. So that then created another wave of, shall we say, abandonment and rejection that we had to work with. Now, because of that, all of the social workers, psychologists that have worked with them have always suggested that we always get them settled wherever we are and whatever we're doing. And the final process of getting them settled was when we finally went for adoption for them about 3 years ago. In the meantime, we'd had a house move. In the meantime, we'd had various assessments done on them, as in psychological assessments. And we'd also, throughout the whole of their primary year, and if I'm talking about the older son, we had therapeutic help for him for at least 5 years, where a therapist came into school and worked with him either every week or once a fortnight and made really good progress with him. Helped him through those early stages of what was being displayed then as being enacted as a much younger child. So we sought out everything that we could for him, and then when we finally moved into our new house, we also went through, or I went through, DDP program, a Dan Hughes program with him as well to build that attachment. So I'll put a link for what that was like. So if you think that's a huge amount of therapeutic work, and with the DDP program as well, there was a lot of regression that happened through that. So we've done all of this therapy, but all the way along, there's always been a concern when looking at his schoolwork and his understanding, his speech, because both boys came with no speech when they were younger and they should have had speech, is that he's still a long way behind. My oldest son has a really nice personality. He aims to please, so he would never ever try to not do the work that he's given at school, and he would never ever be badly behaved or whatever. He's just got a really lovely personality, and so the concern has always been that because he's so lovely and he doesn't cause any problems in the classroom, and most of the teachers and children really like him, so he's not being noticed for what the real problems are. Now, we've raised this several times throughout more than one school, because they've had 2 schools, one where they were before when we were fostering and one where they are now when we've adopted them. And the answer's always been he's trying really hard, he's doing really well, he is making progress, But our fear has always been that he's making progress, but he's not really closing the gap. And so the gap has always been at least 18 months in some subjects, but possibly more in others. And when you go into parents' evenings and you look at his work and you look at his book, your heart drops, because you know it's the best he can do, but the writing's barely legible and he's really struggling with lots of the maths, and you just say, well done, you're trying really hard, but in your heart of hearts you're worried that he's probably slipping further behind and there's probably more to it. But never really got, in primary school anyway, anybody to carry that torch. And in many ways we've not wanted to have a particular statement or label for the boys. We've wanted to normalize their lives as much as possible. And I know that lots of you will have different opinions on this, so please accept that this is just the way that we feel now. And actually in the past we haven't felt like we want to pursue any assessment, proper assessment for him or our other son. We've wanted to normalise it, but we've come to the point now when we've realised that if we normalise it anymore, he's not going to get the help that he needs, because he's moved into the next school. Moving into the next school happens around about when you're 11, so we call it secondary school. So he's moved into that bigger school with lots more children. At first, you'll see on some of my videos back along, quite a long way back along, not only was he bullied, but he also wasn't getting any support whatsoever in the classroom. And so suddenly this gap seemed huge. He just didn't understand anything that was going on in the classroom, and there was no support put in place for him. Now, once we kept him home a bit and kind of banged the drum, he did get that support put in place, and now we have the most amazing Senko that's following through a pathway for us to get something sorted for him. But it was her that said what had really been in my heart for many years, but I hadn't wanted to face, and maybe neither had a lot of the teachers that have worked with him. She said, if you've done all this therapeutic work over all these years and you've tried to pursue all of these avenues for therapeutic work and attachment, and he's still this far behind and doesn't understand what's going on, don't you think we should start looking at other things? And I was like, yes, I do. She has then started the process of looking at what this could be. Now, because the boys have come from a history of alcohol and drug abuse, then alcohol features quite firmly in the background, and you'll see another video that I've done on fetal alcohol syndrome that you can have a look at. So there was always this risk. They had assessments when they were younger, and it was showed that this older son was quite a long way behind, even when he was having his initial assessments when he was sort of 3. And so she has started the process of looking at what this could be. And when you're starting with a blank canvas, how hard this is for any of you who've been through it, to try and get an assessment done, how hard this is. Sometimes we sit in judgment on parents and we say, oh, you know, they've managed to get a diagnosis for this or that, but you know, is it really that bad? It's not that easy to get a diagnosis. It's not. There's a lot involved, and I'm sure that lots of you can actually say, yeah, that's true. It's not that easy, because you have to narrow down what it could be. And with the children that I have, it could be a number of things. So the first thing that we're looking at is fetal alcohol syndrome, and to do that there has to be a whole host of other assessments. But what I'm trying to get to with this video, I found one person to champion that process, one person to help us to pull it all together, that is willing to tread that pathway with us. And without that one person, we still wouldn't be doing it now. So one of the assessments that he's going to be having is speech and language, because speech and language has always been an issue for him. His understanding and his expressive language and descriptive language has always been behind. So he's going to end up with a 2-day sort of intense look at that. Then there's going to be an educational psychologist on standby for a consultation, and we are also looking at having him biologically screened, genetically screened, to rule out anything else that could be genetic, and that is going to be done at a hospital, and that has a waiting list. In the meantime, I've also had to write up the history again so that that can be used in what we call over here an ECHP. I think that's the right words the letters go around, but that's what it's called, and it's a statement of educational needs basically. And without that statement of educational needs, if he needs to go to a specialist school, which is in the balance, if I'm honest, we don't know yet, but we can't do that unless he has an EHCP written up and ready to go. And all of these things need to be done to get a diagnosis, and that is where we're at. But we were told that this could take about a year. So he's already struggling immensely at school. He's already had a pre-screening test for dyslexia as part of this assessment process, and that has shown that he is possibly severely dyslexic, so no wonder why he cannot understand what's going on. So it's a long time, and it's been a long time coming. It's been quite a fight, and I think for you, if you have adopted children and you know that they are developmentally further behind, I think there is a danger in just looking at attachment issues. And I think attachment is an amazing theory, an amazing thing to work on, so don't get me wrong, I'm not running that down in any way. There's loads of videos, there's a whole playlist on attachment on my channel, please find it if you're interested. But the danger of that is that people do not want to look at anything else because of their backgrounds. They don't want to look at a diagnosis because of their backgrounds, but he isn't going to get the help that he needs, possibly, especially into adulthood. He's just not going to get the help he needs if we don't start going down this route. So guys, I will update you on how these things are going, keep you informed about how the whole diagnosis process ends up going, whether we get a diagnosis, whether we get this statement of educational needs, for want of a better word, in place, and where things end up going, because you may be interested if you're in a similar situation. So thank you for listening.